and when it was very dangerous to speak the truth in an age of censorship. Nowadays, of course, we live in a culture that tells us you can say anything, you can do anything as long as you don't hurt another person. We have all this freedom to speak, constitutionally protected. So why do people still want to have costumes to play those roles when as a culture we're taught we're supposed to be ourselves, individuals, and value truth and justice and things like that? That's an interesting question for me.
Quite a lot of that freedom is in fact false, because there are many things that we are not allowed to talk about. You can talk about sex with people you have just met, but you cannot talk about money, and you cannot talk about death, and talking about religion with people who you don't already know you agree with can lead you into a lot of trouble. You cannot talk about class. There are many taboo subjects in our society which there are laws that say you can talk about them, but people don't because they find them extremely uncomfortable. And those are the things that I think fantasy, science fiction, fairy tale, and mythic literature of all kinds, and theater things where you can show these things. They can be provocative, but there's always this, well, it's happening at a distance. It's happening with people who aren't dressed the way we are. It's okay for us to listen to this, and they are affected without realizing that they're affected by it. So you can say things that are extremely profound without people feeling threatened. And making your way among all of these social taboos, no, nobody's going to throw you in jail for saying them, but people are going to look at you funny. And being looked at funny in our society is not, it's hard for a lot of people.
Not everyone. Along these same lines, I mean, I can make, and do, often make jokes about eating children, which, let's face it, in a normal situation would be considered quite alarming. But I can say to someone whose child is next to them, I can say, you gonna eat that? And they laugh. Instead of saying, where are the police? So, I mean, it's very much along those lines.
But what's the benefit of that? Like when...
Of eating children?
But being able to say that, I mean, what then is happening because you got to say that?
Well, for one thing, I think it just sort of breaks down a barrier where people are they see this costume and they're wondering what it's about, and when the character is not saying, oh, children, yum yum yum, but being very nonchalant and just it's an everyday thing. I mean, if you think about the majority of animal, I mean, if you think of a lion, you don't think of a lion as evil because it eats gazelle. You don't think of a person being evil because they eat a salad or a hamburger. A monster is going to eat whatever it normally eats, and it should not probably get really excited about what it's eating, unless it hasn't eaten in a while, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, if a creature's natural food source is children, then yeah.
What if the child is coated in chocolate?
Oh, let's not go there. Most children are covered with chocolate.
One experience that I've had with when you were asking what does that do is there was, a couple of years ago, there's a play called A Piece of My Heart, and it is set in Vietnam, and it's about women that went over there and what their experience was before, during, and after the war. And one night after we did the performance, I played sort of, if you can imagine this, the hippie chick. And one night afterwards we had, at the end of the play, we had recreated the wall with actual names from the town that we had performed in, and it was a very powerful thing. It moved a lot of people, and we had a veteran come up to us after the show in the green room, and he said, still makes me a little, he said, I have never talked about the war, but tonight I'm going to go home and talk to my family. And that is why I do what I do, because it creates a place where you can go in, you can watch a show, and you can say, I am not alone. someone else has felt this, and hopefully it turns a key in your heart, it opens a door for you, and it creates, for those of us that are not artists, that are not, I feel sort of like a gatekeeper, that I walk around and open doors for people so that they can walk through those doors, cross those thresholds, so that they can go home and talk to their families when they couldn't before, because they saw this unfold, and to me there's so much power in that, there's so much truth and power in that.
And likewise, actually, with me, I know there's a lot of children who have problems with fears of the dark or things like that, or the proverbial monster in the closet, as it were. And this outfit allows them to potentially meet that monster and see that he's not necessarily such a bad guy as they think. Maybe he's just peeking in to see if they're all right. And by the way, I came up with this philosophy well before that Monsters, Inc. movie came out. But I've had very special moments when I've been able to connect with children. For example, I used to give out troll rocks, which were simply pieces of gravel, but I would tell them, they can wish on this. If they believe in the wish, that the wish will come true. And of course, for the parents, I tell them that they have to obey what their parents tell them to do as well. So the parents like that kind of thing. But on occasion, I've had a young child look around and find a piece of gravel to return to me as well. And I thought that was a very special moment. And that's the kind of thing that really fuels the desire to keep doing these kinds of things. When you can connect to a child and make them smile, or make it to where when they first see you, they're terrified, and get them to where they won't leave you alone because they can't get enough of you. That's the real paycheck.
Can I follow up on that? I just
Certainly.
thought that interestingly, there's actually a type of play therapy called costume play therapy, which is used in some ways very similar to that, to be able to make connections with often older children who have kind of lost the ability to be playful, lost the ability to put themselves into play in symbolic ways, and also to let the child communicate some things about themselves that they maybe can't do verbally. So, actually sounds really.
Actually, I was going to ask you, I was wondering, because I have this theory about how the fact that parents come up to me and say, is there anything scary in your book? Am I going to have to deal with my child having nightmares? And I don't know, because I don't know their kid. But I also try very hard not to say what's wrong with being scared of something that isn't going to hurt you, and that you can deal with it, that you can talk about, and that isn't threatening you physically. What's wrong with learning how to be afraid?
Yeah.
And you can't say that. But is that?
Yeah.
Is there anything to that?
Yeah, there really is. You have to experience a range of emotion as children, and frightening things, and that's the way we develop ways of coping with those things. And we do, as kids, we use we turn pieces of clay into war tanks, and we and it's part of developing. Practicing schemas and figuring out how you cope with scary things and difficult things, and I think costume is a way that you can do that for some kids who aren't as verbal, aren't as precocious, aren't able to have insight into what they're doing, what's going on with them. But costume is such a communicative thing. The appearance is actually, there's some theorists who say appearance is more communicative than words, really. Well, I guess that would be a picture paints 1,000 words, right? So yeah, I think that's very true. I think what you're thinking is very consistent with kind of what kids need to do to develop.
And if you think of the anthropological roots of performance and impersonation, it's like there's two tracks. There's the sympathetic magic where people would dress up as the animals that they wanted to successfully hunt, for instance. But then the line of dressing up as the things you feared, that's how at least Westerners believe Halloween began. The evil spirits were about, if you dressed up as one, either it wouldn't bother you because it thought you were one of them, or you would scare it away.